y'all. Welcome back as we continue through the book of Deuteronomy together. We are walking into chapter 24 in the book of Deuteronomy today, and this chapter continues the guidelines for how to live as God's holy nation. And this chapter specifically covers how the nation was to proceed if a husband and wife don't get along and marriage just crumbles apart and falls apart. And he also addresses what to do when debts rise up, if a kidnapping occurs, or if skin disease breaks out. Through it all, he emphasizes taking care of the needs of the people, especially those who are less fortunate within the community. And he stresses the importance of protecting human dignity within the nation. And as we move into this chapter, keep in mind, again, this is a different time and this is a different culture. And the nation wasn't very masculine driven, as were the nations around them during this time period. And God, in his greatness, he set out laws and regulations and guidelines to protect women and children so they wouldn't just be sold and treated as property and just discarded out and left out to waste. And we'll go ahead and move into verse 1 of chapter 24 together. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him. Having discovered something wrong with her, he writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. When she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. But if the second husband also turns against her, writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away, or if he dies, the first husband may not marry her again, for she has been defiled. That would be detestable to the Lord. You must not bring guilt upon the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession. So God does not allow wife swapping. Marriage is a physical union between two people, and at its foundation, that union stands. Therefore, only physical reasons were allowed to dissolve marriage. In Romans 7:1-3, as well as 1 Corinthians 7:39, the only two reasons written that would be allowed in divorce cases are the death of a spouse or adultery. The Old Testament law says that the adulterous man and woman were to be killed, so their death would leave the innocent spouses to be remarried. Divorce is compared to death when caused by adultery, leaving the innocent partner free. In the Gospels, we learn that Jesus didn't allow divorce in consent, but in response to the hardness of the hearts of the humans. It's always better to confess the sin, repent, and be restored and forgiven, and hopefully be able to save the marriage. Sin is a great destroyer, but God in his great glory, he restores, he redeems. Where sin destroys, God puts back together. He brings forth testimony and glory that gives him honor through situations. There's a lot of testimonies out there of marriages that have walked through extremely difficult circumstances, but God has brought restoration and healing. It doesn't mean that there's not difficult consequences to those choices, but God still brings forth a testimony of healing, and it's beautiful when that happens. The Bill of Divorcement was an official document that protected the women from slander and abuse, and it also gave her the privilege of a second marriage. The man issuing the divorce would end up losing what was left of the marriage price or the dowry, so he really had to consider this decision deeply, and he had to take time to really make sure this is what he wanted to do. The women would not be allowed to return to her first husband because that would ultimately cheapen her. If he all of a sudden wants her back, changed his mind, it makes her nothing but a piece of property to be just handed around, and God was not going to allow that. He wants her treated with dignity and not to be sold at willy-nilly at a man's will if he changes his mind or wants something different or whatever. God said no, you can't just do that. She is a human. God cares about human dignity, and this law is put into effect to help try to protect women in this time and culture in society, not to make it easy for a man to divorce her. And we'll go ahead and move into verse 5. A newly married man must not be drafted into the army or be given any other official responsibilities. He must be free to spend 1 year at home, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. So again, we see God wanting family to be core. Men, make it a goal to keep your wife happy. Any able-bodied man could take another man's place in the army, but no man could take another man's place at home. This law shows the high value that God puts on human love and the responsibility of marriage and the foundation of family that God designed. And we'll continue in verse 6. It is wrong to take a set of millstones or even just the upper millstone as security for a loan, for the owner used it to make a living. If anyone kidnaps a fellow Israelite and treats him like a slave or sells him, the kidnapper must die. In this way you will purge the evil from among you. In all cases involving serious skin diseases, be careful to follow the instructions of the Levitical priests. Obey all the commands I have given them. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam as you were coming from Egypt. If you lend anything to your neighbor, do not enter his house to pick up the item he is giving as security. You must wait outside while he goes in and brings it out to you. If your neighbor is poor and gives you his cloak as security for a loan, do not keep the cloak overnight. Return the cloak to its owner by sunset so he can stay warm through the night and bless you. And the Lord your God will count you as righteous. Never take advantage of poor or destitute laborers, whether they are fellow Israelites or foreigners living in your towns. You must pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and they are counting on it. If you don't, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and it would be counted against you as sin. Parents must not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor children for the sins of their parents. Those deserving to die must be put to death for their own crimes. True justice must be given to foreigners living among you and to orphans, and you must never accept a widow's garment as security for her debt. Always remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you from your slavery. This is why I have given you this command. When you are harvesting your crops and forget to bring in a bundle of grain from your fields, don't go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. When you beat the olives from your olive trees, don't go over the boughs twice. Leave the remaining olives for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. When you gather the grapes in your vineyard, don't glean the vines after they are picked. Leave the remaining grapes for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt. That is why I am giving you this command. People. The first obligation of the nation was to show kindness and generosity to each other within the nation. All transactions within the nation, every transaction was to be made humanely and in great compassion to the other fellow human. They were to help each other, not profit from each other. Humans are created in God's image, and they are not to be treated like property or merchandise. They were not allowed to sell each other or enslave each other. All of these instructions deal with the heart condition of how the people of God's nation were to treat each other and how to do so justly and humanely. Jesus brought even deeper perspective to all of this when he came to earth and taught his instruction. The only way we can live out God's terms is if we have a heart change and love God passionately. And then out of that great love for God, we love the people around us. Jesus came and said, love your enemy. If someone strikes you, offer the other cheek. If someone steals your coat, give him a second. If someone asks you to walk a mile, walk 5. Jesus says go above and beyond for other people, because other people are made in God's image and they're God's people. And we are to show the love and kindness and compassion and mercy and grace and forgiveness that God has shown us, because he has poured it all out for us. So we should do no less than pour it out for others as as well, out of just great gratitude for him and all he has done and continues to do in our lives. Legalism will never change the human heart. Only Jesus can. And when you get a glimpse of the resurrected, glorified Jesus who sits on the throne today, your heart can't help but to be changed just by a glimpse of who he is. He is sovereign. He rules. He reigns. He came to earth. He died and he rose again. He is in heaven on the throne. He rules. He is King of kings, Lord of lords, sovereign over all. He intercedes before the throne for every single one of us and loves us passionately with everything. And we should in turn pursue him with all of our guts too. Lay it all down. Give him control of everything and love the people around us like he commissioned us and called us to do. Spread the gospel, spread the love of Jesus, spread the kindness, spread the forgiveness. Point people to Jesus. Share your testimony and share the gospel. People need Jesus. We all need Jesus. And we just need to humble ourselves, repent of ourselves and our selfishness, and let Jesus rule, let Jesus reign, and let him work through our lives. And chase him and pursue him with all of our guts. Thanks, y'all. I hope you're having a glorious day in the Lord.